Hey everyone, as promised, this is the next question in the Q&A series on video. I just received this one recently from a viewer named Jeremy. It's regarding the differences between the law of God and the law of Moses. Many people wonder if the two laws are the same. And since it's common knowledge that the law of Moses was nailed to the cross according to Colossians chapter 2, they assume that the Ten Commandments were nailed there as well. So what I'm going to do here is share a series of Bible verses that show how the law of Moses was only enforced until the cross of Christ, and the law of God was and always will be enforced for all eternity. I mean, after all, it's the law of the land in his kingdom, New Jerusalem, right? And that's an eternal city. So Moses' law was actually called the law of Moses in Luke 2:22. God's law is called the law of the Lord in Isaiah chapter 5, verse 24. Moses' law is called the law contained in ordinances in Ephesians 2:15. God's law is called the royal law in James 2:8. The law of Moses was written by Moses in a book. You can see that in 2 Chronicles chapter 35, verse 12. God's law was written by his own finger in the tables of stone in Exodus 31:18 as well as Exodus 32:16. The law of Moses was placed on the side of the ark in a leather pouch. Deuteronomy 31 verse 26 covers that. God's law was placed inside the ark in Exodus chapter 40 verse 20. The law of Moses ended at the cross, according to Colossians chapter 2 verse 14. Also see Ephesians chapter 2 verses 15 and 16 as well. There's actually more verses, but I'm just trying to keep this short. God's law, however, will stand for all eternity, forever. Look at Psalm 111 verses 7 and 8, or Luke chapter 16 verse 17, and again, there's even more verses to confirm that. The law of Moses was added because of sin. Galatians 3:19 covers that. God's law points out sin. See Romans chapter 7 verse 7, or Romans chapter 3 verse 20, or again, a multitude of other verses. And that's the reason the devil goes after it and tries to make it look like it's abolished, because when mankind looks at the law of God, they realize they need a savior because they know they've broken many of the laws. And the wages of sin is death. We all know that too. So anyway, the law of Moses is contrary to us. It was against us. Colossians chapter 2 verse 14 again. But God's law is not grievous. 1 John chapter 5 verse 3. As a matter of fact, God actually helps you keep it. He writes it in your heart, but that's a whole nother video. The law of Moses is carnal. Hebrews chapter 7 verse 16. God's law is spiritual. Romans chapter 7 verse 14. The law of Moses made nothing perfect. Hebrews chapter 7 verse 19. God's law is perfect. Psalm 19 verse 7. And the final one here, and this is what shocks a lot of people when they find this out. The law of Moses judges no one. Colossians chapter 2 verses 14 and 16. But God's law is the basis of judgment. James chapter 2 verses 10 to 12. Thank you for watching. God bless.